Our United Way Spotlight of the Week is on Ryandale Transitional Housing, and I'm joined by Bob Crawford, Chair of the Board. Welcome, Bob. So nice of you to join us.
Thank you very much, Donna. It's a privilege to be here.
So tell me about Ryandale.
Well, it's interesting. The name Ryandale is fairly well known in parts of Kingston. I've been involved for about 7 years, but it goes back more than 25 years ago that a group of people, in fact, a group of 7 churches at that time, decided there was need for a shelter, and they began Ryandale Shelter for the Homeless. But if we go back about 10 or 12 years, they also began, in addition to the shelter, a transition house. And with the city's 10-year housing and homelessness plan, which is probably about 8 years ago now, it was decided Kingston didn't need as many shelter spaces, and the shelter was gradually closed. Now, as an aside, one might say that they wish there was that shelter there again now. But we kept the transition house going, and so we've changed our working name now to Ryandale Transition House or Ryandale Transitional Housing.
So what is transitional housing?
Right. And we've actually had people suggest they might be well served by Ryandale Transition House for different uses than the transition we do, which is from homelessness to independent living. So we would take, in our case, it's men these days in our 2 operations, and we'd like to see them move from being on the street or otherwise not housed or underhoused to living independently on their own.
So this gets into life skills?
That would be part of it. The clients would come from, from any background, but 3 main backgrounds would be some with mental health issues and some with addiction issues and then some out of incarceration. Oh. So from those groups, you may maybe come out of an addictions program, but you can't just walk up to a landlord and get a place to stay. So you need to develop some skills of, even in our case, living with others. It ranges the skills they need. We don't have an established program. Each client is treated individually according to what they need. Yeah.
Well, if you've never lived on your own before in your own place, it's just the things that you and I probably take for granted, how to wield a vacuum cleaner and how to clean a bathroom and iron a shirt and all of those kinds of things that we think, well, of course, but you're not born with that knowledge.
That's exactly right. And it's an interesting example because the one I like to think of is we had a client come in last year who wouldn't know how to shop and make a meal. So he sits down with our house manager and they make up a grocery list with the house manager doing it the first time. Then they go shopping together. And then the next time you'd get the client to make up the list and try to take a little more control of it. And they gradually learn to shop. Now that's a bit unusual. Probably most of the clients coming in know how to find their way through a grocery store. Some like to cook and some not so much, but they'll share together and work on that together. It's fun to watch. Yeah.
Well, and there's a knack to shopping as well, and how to realize that the lowest price is not always the best value. It's look at the per unit price, and it's all of those little tricks that we've caught on. How the flyers, how to read the flyers, and choose where you're going to do your shopping based on, the things that you're going to use most often. I don't think people do the cherry picking thing so much anymore, where they used to go to every grocery store on a Saturday morning. I think the price of gas kind of makes that not so smart anymore. But yeah, there's just things I can see that. Yeah. So beyond life skills, what are some of the other skills that you work on?
Well, certainly social skills and getting along with each other in the house is important. And then, how do you get out there and find a place to live? How do you find a job? How do you go about doing that? So there's really social skills and life skills. Many of them may need prompting to keep their appointments. So they're living there and you try to get the list of the things they have coming up, and they can get reminders And, many don't need that. They're quite independent in doing that. But we're there for them if they need help getting their way through day by day and living life in the way the community expects it as well. You keep your appointments and so on, yeah.
You mentioned coming out of incarceration, so how are you different from the John Howard Society?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm not the best one to answer it because we have a good relationship with them, and we'll talk to them about particular clients that they maybe wonder. I would say that ours are maybe more ready for independent living when they would suggest them to us. We had an interesting case. It's now more than a year ago that he left us, but he came to us and his incarceration had included 40 years of incarceration, starting at age 18 and in and out of prisons. So when he first came to us, if he walked out the front door, he would look up and down the street and turn around and come back in because no one was giving him permission. So it took a long time for him to learn just to be living in the community and be free and be allowed to walk in and out of his room. So it's actually been a wonderful story. He's now living independently and we keep in touch. But yeah, things like that, I wouldn't have known that, well, you can't walk out your door and down the street? Of course you can. But that can be a learned skill, yeah.
I never would have thought of that. You must have some real success stories, things that the thing that gets your feet on the floor every morning. Can you tell me about a few of the best ones, the ones that you still think back on and say, wow, what would have happened to them without us?
Yeah, that's probably my favorite one. But I would say, and we're careful, obviously not using names, but the area that I most like is the ones who reconnect with family. They have become estranged from their families because of their lifestyles, maybe with addictions or possibly with incarceration and so on, whatever the issue. And as their life becomes more stable, they gradually reconnect with family. And so there are any number of stories. Maybe they end up then moving back to another province where they originally were, sometimes near Kingston, and can once again maybe not move in with family. Maybe it won't go quite to that point, but they've again reconnected and they can celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving with their family. And I think that's great. You asked for stories, and another would be those that have gotten gainful employment and they really are able to hold a job and they can go out to it every day. And we have maybe cover that we have a second property now. We have two houses and we consider them Transition House 1 and 2, and you sort of graduate to Transition House 2. And we have 3 of the men there that are working virtually full time and they're faithful to their employers and so on. And so those are great stories. They probably can soon move on out of transitional housing.
Right. It's a great project, and I've only got 1 minute left, but can you tell me how the United Way has played a part?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking that. We would not be a transition house without the United Way. We would be a boarding house where people could come and stay, and we'd just be kind of break even financially. But it's the United Way funding, first of all, that enables us to have managers in the houses who can work with the clients individually and spend time with them. So we are only transitional housing because of the United Way. And then just things like during COVID, helping us find masks, test kits and so on that are so vital to our operation. And then their day of caring when they come and spruce up some area of the house. So yeah, we are just so pleased to be a United Way partner agency. Yeah.
And lots of good reasons to support the United Way.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Donna.